In the last video, I traced us through the history of nonviolence and how this skill and power has been passed on through time. But I want to point out a couple other things here. First of all, is something really interesting, and I learned this from Mark Kurlansky's book, 25 Lessons from the History of a Dangerous Idea. It's about nonviolence. The first thing is there's not a proactive word for saying nonviolence. We have to say non-violence. So, a couple of things. This is why people who support nonviolence really try to have it be one word instead of with a hyphen in there, so that we can really indicate that we're not just doing the absence of something, that we're actually proactively doing something. In Hinduism, there's a concept of ahimsa. Ahimsa, though, is also harm, and ahimsa is non-harm. But it also was pointing at something that was proactive. It meant more or less like the creative power that arises when you have controlled your intentions to do harm. So you have a desire to do harm, but you're taking it under control, and then creative power comes out of that. It was Gandhi who first created the first proactive word for this, which is satyagraha, which I've heard translated as like truth force. So that's a bit, but it wasn't until, first of all, until like 1920 that we even had the word nonviolence in English. So this is a new thing that's coming, which is why it's so awesome that people really held it down to take this timeless idea and bring it into modernity. So that's going to bring me to my next recommendation. So there's a woman named Erica Chenoweth, and she was at Harvard wanting to study terrorism and trying to prove that, you know, people who use terrorism and violence might have a good reason for it, and thought that nonviolence was some sort of hippie thing. Maria Stephan was another academic and joined her and said, let's see if we can prove this, or let's find out if it's true or not. And they went and they did a statistical analysis of case studies of every revolution that happened in the entire planet between 1900 and 2006. And guess what they found out? Nonviolent resistance and the campaigns for it are twice as effective as their violent counterparts in achieving their goals. And what's even more is that nonviolence revolutions create more durable, internally peaceful, more democratic organizations, and they're much less likely to regress back into civil war. That's not just it there. Nonviolence even works when it fails. So even if they don't turn over the system that they're fighting against, people who are fighting for nonviolence, the culture changes, the laws change, people's standards are raised. Another thing is nonviolence is 2 to 3 times as fast or more quick at achieving the goal than violence. More or less between like 3 or 4 years for nonviolent revolution, and violent revolutions usually take about 9 to 10 years. That is a lot of killing to create the world that one wants. So how does it work? Well, nonviolent movements have a lot more participation. They're like 4 times as large as violent resistance. And that's because it's both morally and physically more accessible. People who are children, adults, aged people are able to participate much more easily. That makes it more visible. And it also means that all these different people from all these different walks of life are more likely to have connections with people who are part of the oppressive system. And that creates shifts in loyalty among the opponents. There's like an anecdote of someone refusing to shoot at an audience because they think, my children, I think, are in there. So here's the best part. Nonviolence is getting better. We're getting better at this. And it's more effective and it's more popular. Right now, like active revolutions, nonviolence is outdoing violent revolutions by 2 to 1. So I highly recommend that you check out the work of Erica Chenoweth. If you find this to be surprising, you should check it out. I'm going to give you links for a video. There's an article. She wrote a book co-authored with Maria Stephan called Why Civil Resistance Works, A Strategic Logic of Nonviolent Conflict. I don't want to say that nonviolence is easy. It takes discipline. It takes dedication. You have to really believe in it, and you have to be willing to get hurt sometime. That was the thing that when I listened to the Threads history of nonviolence, everyone took some freaking hits. So it's not easy. But it works. And the reason why it works is because it lifts up both the people and the oppressors, and it shows them their humanity and reminds them of the world that they want to live in, and then it lays the foundation for the world that we want to live in. Basically, what this means is with nonviolence, the means for getting change become the same as the ends that we're trying to get to. And that's inclusion and nonviolence and peace. And this reminds me of the third rule of conflict, which I will now talk about in the next video. So stay tuned, subscribe, check it all out, and if you're trying to figure out how to connect all these dots, I also have a Substack, omniwin.substack.com, and you can find a synthesis essay where I connect all these different videos together into hopefully a coherent narrative. So stay tuned. Thank you for watching this video, and yeah, let's find out what the third rule of conflict is about.